The perks of having plenty of guitars in the room. Okay, so I should have set up this better. Try to go with it. Okay, so The Picnic at Hanging Rock by Joan, Lindsay. I wish I had the book cover. I don't, but it does. I've heard 1967 version. It has, I believe, the original Peter. I think there's a 70s Peter Weir movie that I heard was pretty good, and that some people had mixed reactions to as well, because it is kind of, like a period piece, and I heard that it wasn't like one of his best. Like, it was kind of him starting out in his career, I think, early on, but I do have gone on to like very much love his other stuff, like Dead Poet Society. He obviously did Truman Show is a classic, but off the top of my head, that's kind of what I know. He was part of the new Hollywood of Australia, but I'm not here to talk about Peter Weir. Obviously, I'm here to talk about Joan Lindsay. I'm sorry, who wrote The Picnic at Hanging Rock in '67, but it takes place. So I call it a period piece in 1900, Valentine's Day, and I actually don't want to give too much of this away because I'm actually quite flummoxed by the plot. I mean, it's a little bit hard to follow. Like, it starts off in kind of almost like a noir, kind of neo-noir kind of thing about four girls around Valentine's Day who basically get kind of enmeshed in this, getting lost at this rock, and they're at this all-school boarding school, and it's very harsh, and it's so harsh to the point where they're forced to wear like dresses and gloves, even when it's hot and hanging around. I'm not sure I've never been to Australia. I'm not sure how hot it is, but I'm sure it's definitely in ecosystem. It's a lot different than America, obviously, where I'm from. As if that isn't obvious enough, but the main thing with that is they're forced to wear all this stuff, and like, even though, just because for the sake of customs, so it's kind of, I guess, showing the kind of abiding kind of critique of the customs and the repression that was shown throughout early 19th century, kind of like post, a little bit Victorian, I guess. Definitely not Regency, but like Victorian era, and there's a lot of that. Since it came out in the '60s, like a lot of the counter-revolution of the '60s too probably played a role in it too. That was kind of heard all the world over, and I think with this Joan and Lindsay, it's more than just a kind of, the girls have gone missing. There's four girls, and each of them go missing around this hanging rock, which is a geographical feature of it's like a really kind of gargantuan thing that people can't really escape, but it's like it's unmistakably just kind of like dangerous. Obviously there's tunnels and there's this and that, and the Australian outback, as far as I heard, is a lot more untrammeled and wild than other people, like in America. And there's this French maiden, she's simply referred to as Mademoiselle, and she's kind of very, she tends to the kids, and she has a very good relationship with them, but she's a little bit more open and less strict than these overseer, these headmistress, and like the headmistress is like this very austere lady, hard to like a lot. When she goes on her tangents, she's just like, oh. Some people are saying that there's almost like a sense of sensuality to this book that is a little bit not, it's subtle at first, but there's parts descriptions of like how hot the weather is and how people are sweating, and it's like one of those things where it's, had this book been written by anybody else, like a guy, for example, especially, it would have just been not worked out. So I was slightly comforted to learn that it was a woman who wrote it. But yeah, it as far as the plot does get kind of caught up, and it does get caught up when people, when the head constable is like consigned to like look for the girls, and there's a lot of this idea of innocent girls versus innocent fragile girls, juxtaposed against a uncaring, harsh nature of reality. I guess that's like one of our themes. Is a contrast between those two. You have like man versus woman too. Like not pitted against in a kind of biblical sense, but in a kind of a modern sense, I guess. Like I guess this kind of predated modernism, I guess, as a art movement, literary movement too. And maybe it's just doing its own thing. I don't know a ton about Joan and Lindsay, but I think there's a lot of this kind of, this versus that kind of thing, what I found in the novel. Themes, and that's kind of what you need with any novel too. It's like you have to kind of resort to using these kind of themes to kind of draw it out, and especially since it's got to think cater towards a wider audience too. I think you can't really get away with just kind of you can't really get caught up in maybe making it overly simplistic too. I think there's definitely themes where I guess that are kids or young adults maybe or teenagers would be able to understand on some surface level, but then there's also stuff that's a little bit kind of for adults too, stuff that I had trouble kind of grappling with. So yeah, there's trying to find these kids and these four girls, and they're I did kind of appreciate this theme of what do you do when you're something like this happens so drastic and tragic, when you lose somebody, and it's something where they're up in the air, they're missing, and they're out there, and they still should be looked for, and they should people should be spending energy, but to what degree do you do that? To what degree do you spend the entire night to show that you care about these people, or something I've always wrestled with personally. This idea that if something drastic happens, if you lose a kid and the whole entire world's eyes are on you, all of a sudden it seems, especially if the media is involved nowadays, that would just be hellish. But if that's all of a sudden the spotlight is on you, what do you do? What's the proper way to respond? Some people might say that you're uncaring if you get a full 8 hours of sleep at night, and it's just I don't know, I'm just kind of intrigued by that. So yeah, Picnic at Hanging Rock. Like I said, I think it was more of a horror thing. It's definitely a horror story, psychological, and I actually heard about this via Mark Fisher's The Weird and the Eerie. Came out. It was one of his last, I think, works. The philosopher. I think he was a kind of a cultural theorist as well. He talked a lot about in that book, which is his last before he passed away tragically, I believe by suicide. And yeah, I think it was one of the, he mentioned Don't Look Now, I believe, by Daphne du Maurier. He also mentioned this, Picnic at Hanging Rock, and he kind of melded that too with The Weird and the Eerie, this idea of the Lovecraftian kind of, you're mentioning something that there's so many things that it could be that what got the kid in the end. Was it a murder, or was it kind of in the Don't Look Now with the dwarf lady running around that looks like one of the kids, and it gets mixed up with them, and I don't want to spoil that either, but is it something even more eerie and out there, like aliens or something? It could be anything, because once you put the you're mentioning something that's in and of itself that's hard to pin, that you can't really equate to normal everyday terms. So yeah, so I definitely recommend it. Check it out if you're into more of a horror psychological thriller kind of thing. Check it out. So thanks for watching.